Welcome back to A Matter of Perspective with Judge Derwin Webb. I am Judge Derwin Webb, coming to you from the Fraser History Museum. We are honored today to be in person.
Yes,
Finally in
indeed.
person. We are having today our special guest, Mr. Matt Reed from the YMCA Safe Place Services. Mr. Reed, good afternoon to you.
How are you, Judge Webb? Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here, and just excited to join this event.
Well, thank you for being here. It's an honor, and like I said, we're in person, so it's the
Feels
pandemic.
different, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Let me ask you this quick question: how have things been for you during the pandemic? How are things now?
Sure. So, fortunately, things, I think, as we've all experienced, are beginning to feel a little more normal, both in my professional life as well as my personal life. So I think in general that's good, and I think vaccinations are well underway, and that's helped a tremendous amount. Personally, it has been challenging for myself, just with all that's going on, managing the pandemic, but also at Safe Place we've remained open throughout the pandemic, and so that has created its own challenges, but it also some amazing moments too. I'm so grateful and thankful that we were able to remain open. We considered ourselves first responders, Judge Webb, and I felt like from the beginning it was important to stay open. And it's been a challenging year, but again, I think we're all seeing the light at the end of the tunnel now.
Before we get to all the work that you're actually doing right now, try to do a little research on you. We were talking about that before. I couldn't find everything. Tell me, where you're from?
Sure. I'm from Louisville. I was born and raised here in Louisville.
So I do have to ask a question. Cats or cards?
I'm a Cards fan.
Okay,
but,
we can continue the
That's
interview
right.
there.
And in fact, I even put my red tie on today and everything, knowing I was coming here. I do have an interesting fact, though. I am a graduate, however, of the University of Kentucky. I got my master's degree at UK because they had the particular counseling program I wanted to go to. But I can tell you, every time I rode through those streets in Lexington, I was kind of wishing I was in Louisville. So I'm a diehard Cards fan.
So we know that you're the executive director now. Tell me about what got you there. How did you become the executive director?
Sure. So when I got out of college, I found an opportunity to work at a residential treatment facility here in Louisville, and I'd always felt a calling to give back, to find a job or an opportunity that was a little bit more than a paycheck. I had really no idea what I was getting into, but working in this treatment facility really helped me feel like this was the kind of work I wanted to do. An opportunity came available at Safe Place, and when we get into some of what we do, I was first drawn, continue to be drawn today, that our mission's a little different. The way we take our approaches and our programs were a little different, and that's what's resonated with me. And I've been there. I'm there. It's like 21 years now, so it's been a long road, but a great road. Okay,
at one time you were the interim. Okay, we're in the process to you becoming the full time.
So I've been the full time exec since 2010. This is my 11th year. Prior to that, I was about 10 years in direct service at Safe Place, primarily in the shelter program, but have worked in some of the other programs as well.
Well, I'm on the board, and I love the mission.
We are grateful. And you're a wonderful board member.
I appreciate that. But I love it. I love doing things with children, especially. I think that's what people know me for. But I guess for me, it was something that I wanted to do. For you, what drew you to Safe Place? Because I think it's not necessarily it's a calling to want to go to a place like that. What made you want to go there?
So when one of the things that Safe Place has always been known for is the fact that we are a choice program. I struggled, honestly, when I worked initially in child care facilities with I think that we don't always treat our kids as assets, and Safe Place has always been an asset-based organization. And so I think continuing that philosophy and always looking at kids as assets has been something that resonated with me. I grew up I was very fortunate growing up. I had a lot of opportunities and grateful for every one of them. And I know I was fortunate. I was privileged. I had these opportunities that, as I got older, wanted to find a way to make sure other kids had those same opportunities. And I think that's what's grounded me in still today in what we do at Safe Place.
Okay, what do you actually do at Safe Place? What are some of the services? Yeah.
So the three main services we offer, we have an emergency shelter, one of a kind here in our community. It's for 12 to 17-year-olds. And these is a program designed for kids that are really in crisis. So if a young person who may be experiencing neglect at home or abuse at home, or maybe they've run away, or even if they're just having school problems, even sometimes maybe they're being bullied at school. But kids come to Shelter House for a lot of different reasons. A lot of those reasons do come down to safety and their well-being that's in jeopardy. As you know, in your role with family court, there's a lot of challenges that our families face. And I think that over the years, those have become more complex. And so our numbers have grown in Shelter House. So it's when kids come to Shelter House, it's a short-term stay. They're there usually just about a week to 2 weeks with us. And we're putting services in place. We're trying to keep kids, our main goal at Shelter House is to try to keep them out of the child welfare system if possible. The family focus, I think, is something that's been key to Shelter House for a long time. We also have an outreach program where we're actually out on the street doing direct outreach to homeless young adults who are 18 to 24. And we also have a drop-in center for that same population of young adults, which happens to be the fastest growing segment of the adult homeless population, our 18 to 24-year-olds. So we have a daily drop-in center where they can come get services there. And then the third program is a mentoring program called Why Now? And it's a mentoring program that's focused on children who have system or justice-involved parents, typically either incarcerated in prison or in jail for a period of time. So we do a very unique mentoring program that's for middle school kids.
So let's say that I'm a child that needs some help. Parents may not be home. There may be an issue at home. I show up at your front door. What's next?
So immediately you'd be welcomed in. We would want to first sit down and talk with you, make sure you're safe, make sure that we understand why you came to us and what was going on. We're going to understand it from your perspective first. Based on whatever is shared with us, we'll take the necessary step to put some protective factors in place. So if there is something going on at home where your safety's in jeopardy, we're going to make sure that we have you stay in our shelter. We're going to keep you safe that night. We are going to eventually contact your guardian, your parents, because we want to let them know that you're safe and everything's okay. But oftentimes, our role initially there is to make sure we protect you really at all costs. So that oftentimes includes involving child protective services, even up to and including a potential court hearing if things warrant that. So bottom line is we're going to make sure that you're safe before we take any next steps with how else to maybe help you and what your family needs.
Let me ask you a question. Do parents ever bring their kids there because they need a break?
They do. And, Judge Webb, sometimes that's a good thing. I think from a prevention standpoint, now I think there's a line where you don't want to be taken advantage of, but I say I welcome a family who's sort of at their wits' end, who just don't know where to turn. I think, in fact, that's the kind of family we would like to work with early on. Because if you don't intervene, then it's going to get to a point where maybe things do get physical or violent at home. And so especially during these times, these latest times, I think there's a lot of stress at home. And needing a break, I think, means, hey, we're at our wits' end. We don't know where to turn to. Now, sometimes we don't always have the kids stay in our shelter. Sometimes we may just start some case management services. So if what I would say is come down, meet with us, let us kind of figure out what we can do to help. And that may include, an opportunity to stay at Shelter House. It could just be some case management and trying to put some services in place.
Let me ask you a question. What is a typical day like there, pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic? So let's talk about pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic, one of the best ways to describe Shelter House on let's just say a busy day, would be similar to what you might, similar to almost like an emergency room. We have, Judge Webb, sometimes 500-600 kids a year will stay with us. So oftentimes that means that on a daily basis, we have new kids that are coming into our program. And so pre-pandemic, you would see maybe a few families in our lobby that were waiting to meet with case managers and counselors to discuss possible placement. We'd have our kids at all their home schools pre-pandemic because that's, first of all, schools were up and running, and we have a great relationship with JCPS where all of our kids can get out to their home schools. So school would be, we wouldn't have NTI going on. But post-pandemic, couple of really big challenges came our way. Up pre-pandemic, the number one partner for referrals was our school system. Since March 13th or so, when schools shut down, all of our referrals that would typically come maybe from a school counselor or a concerned teacher, those sort of stopped. And we ended up with a 90% decrease in referrals from the school system during the pandemic. Conversely, referrals from the police department went up 57%. And so that was a big eye opener for us to highlight that, we're still getting kids and we're getting a pretty steady flow of kids, but we were getting them maybe a little bit later. We're getting them once the police were involved versus where we oftentimes have a counselor or a concerned teacher identify. Maybe same with courts. I have to think about the same goes for a lot of court personnel, judges, and the county attorneys. A lot of folks just without as many eyes on the kids. I think that it certainly affected the kids coming into shelter. Now, we still had kids there every day. I have to say that some of the degree of issues going on at home, some of the abuse was more severe than we've seen in the past. But as I started off, we're getting out of that, and I hope that normalcy will bring some normalcy back to the families as well too.
Well, what about now? How are things going over there now?
So things are it's starting to feel like a typical summer. Right now, there's 8 kids staying in shelter house. We have a full group of Why Now kids in the mentoring program that are getting ready to graduate here in the middle of the summer. So we're looking forward to enrolling a whole new class in our mentoring program. And I just got a report from our outreach program. In this last month, we made either through connections in the drop-in center or at the street level, we outreached to 100 homeless young adults, which is by far the greatest number of kids we've found since the pandemic. So I can't say that we're back at the same level that we were, but it's pretty close, and we're grateful for that because I think there's a lot of kids with needs out there.
I know there are a lot of kids, but there are only so many beds there. So how many kids can you have there at one time?
So we have beds for 20 total beds. We have 10 beds for girls and 10 beds for boys. And again, that's in the shelter house, which is 12 to 17-year-olds. And that had its own set of challenges, but we also are able to maintain our spacing, even though we're still coming out of the pandemic. We still we're still in mask, and we still are employing social distancing. So that of course was a challenge during COVID, but and we will probably continue to have those in place through the summer at least until I think we're going to follow protocols along the lines of the school. Mm-hmm. And as if school goes open in full, then we'll probably look at some of our protocols at that point.
Whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, during the pandemic, we were all faced with a whole new set of challenges. What do you feel is the biggest challenge that Safe Place is facing right now?
Honestly, Judge Webb, I think that the biggest challenge we're facing is knowing how to best support our young people right now. I think following a year of the pandemic, of the social unrest, having conversations with our young people about systemic racism, as diverse as our staff team is, and we have a very diverse staff team. That's new for a lot of our staff, just to have those conversations. Now to carry that conversation into a room of young people who are disenfranchised, who have been affected by that system, is very challenging. I think that we've spent a lot more time talking about our successes and what we know is going good with some of the young people that have left the shelter, because boy, it's just tough right now. It's really tough to make sense of it all. I have to give a ton of credit to our staff. Quan Founder is our director of Shelter House, and he's done a great job creating some of those conversations among the staff team, because that's got to carry forward in how to converse and have those conversations with our kids too. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. Is probably just staying motivated and realizing that there are a lot of successes that we're reaching, but despite what's been going on lately, honestly.
Do some of your kids come back?
They do. In fact, that probably represents what I would say some of our greatest successes are, is when they do come back. Just this week, a young man who's now in his late 20s has come back and had a great story of how Shelter House helped connect him to his new family, to his new foster family, and that worked out beautifully. And he was there to interested in employment. He wants to come full circle and give back, and that he feels like this is now something that he wants to do. And I mean, those are the days you look forward to. When, in fact, I have it written down in my office. Every time we have the opportunity to offer a job or a volunteer opportunity to some of our alumni, and there's a lot of other ways to measure success, but I think that's one of the biggest and most real ways that we do is when we can actually stay that connected, and that they remain connected in their 20s, that they want to come back and either do the work or volunteer, and those are always awesome days.
Every child is unique. I have 3 kids. They are not the same at all. Is there something that is unique about the children that actually come to Shelter House?
That's a great question. I think that the best way to answer that is, yes, there's a lot of unique things with our kids. That there isn't necessarily one particular issue or type of kid that comes. In fact, we routinely will have kids from almost every residential zip code come to Shelter House. So, I think they come for a lot of different reasons. I think, though, what's common to all of them, and I think it sets them apart, is, they are, they're hurting, and they are having a hard time with communicating and talking about that, and maybe even knowing why they're even hurting. I think that the other thing that defines our kids is that they all have hopes and dreams. They all have aspirations. They all have very unique strengths. And sometimes these are kids that haven't always been told that they are worth something, that they have a lot to give. And it just, so I think that it goes back into our philosophy. When when you have a kid who starts to fall in love with art because you offer an art program, that's doing something that maybe, nobody else has done for them. So I think it's that they all have a lot of strengths, and having some of those come out at Shelter House is always a beautiful thing.
Now, we talked about accomplishments a second ago. Mm-hmm. What do you feel is your biggest accomplishments there?
I think as a team, our biggest accomplishment as a team was probably staying open during the pandemic, in just of recent times. My biggest accomplishment is probably when I share it with the success of a young person. And I think about this past weekend, and graduation weekend is always something I look forward to. Not because I've got a bunch of teenagers of my own, but because it always represents, there's so many of our kids either through Shelter House or Why Now that are walking across the stage. And I think about a young man named Isaiah. I think about a young lady named Katrina. Those 2 people walked across the stage, and that's what I picture as the accomplishment right there, is just seeing those young people walk across the stage. So it's really just sharing their greatest accomplishment, I think, more than anything. There's other great examples like that, but I think, this kind of work, you don't always know what goes on next and what happens next. So, just visualizing kids walking across the stage at high school graduation doesn't get any better than that.
Well, I tell you, my father used to tell me that sometimes you don't choose a job. The job kind of chooses you. I can recall back to my first client that I had in family law. I can still see the person, and I can still know the person's name. I know the case. I know it backwards and forwards. And it prompted me to want to do more in family law. And ultimately, I became a family law judge. Is there one particular person, I know you mentioned a couple people that walked across the stage this year. Is there one particular person that would be the face of your face for Safe Place?
There's a few, but one that sticks out in my mind is probably one of the first cases I ever got to work with. A young lady who dropped into shelter house on Christmas Eve, very strung out on drugs, and had spent several nights out on the street. I was brand new to the job. Through the next 3 months of rehab and involving her parents and working through a lot of issues, she went home and things kind of just began to click and things worked out. I think about her because of dropping in on Christmas Eve, and that she literally woke up there Christmas morning, and also because she's one of the first cases. But I also know now, just having had the opportunity to stay connected, she's doing amazing. She's a nurse. She's got a family of her own, and I just think about that. There's been so many kids since, but it was probably that case that got me hooked in to say, things are possible. As low of a place as that young lady was and her family was on Christmas, to see where they went from there and to know that she's doing so well now, it's something I reflect on every holiday, honestly. That first year I was at Safe Place.
Let me ask you this question. I know that I have information because I'm on the board. So I know that there were a lot of plans, a lot of things that we had planned for 2020. And then March of 2020 hit, boom, everything kind of shut down. And I know that we are getting back to quote unquote normal, but it's going to be a new normal. What do you see on the horizon for Safe Place over the next few years? Some of the things that you want to see accomplished?
Sure. One opportunity I really hope comes to fruition is a new federal partnership that would expand the Why Now mentoring program into not only working with children who have incarcerated parents, but children who have opioid or addiction issues with their caregivers or parents. So that could be on the horizon. That could be a real transformational grant for the mentoring program. I feel that, shelter house has to have an increased role with some of the youth violence, with some of the situations that we've gone through over the last, year. We've always been a shelter and welcoming, and I think there's still, though, a place for us in the community in other ways to reach kids. I want to be a part of that solution, whether it be a part of a community policing strategy or ways that we can support our young people. There's too much violence going on with our teenagers, and it's gut wrenching to pick the paper up and read about what's happened. And I just know that we want to be a part of that solution. In fact, have been working as we open shelter back up, in preparing for how can, what's our next move in terms of being able to be the right place for some of those kids. I think there's some great opportunity with the pandemic lifting. Our YMCAs are open. I think that we're going to see a lot of opportunities within the YMCAs over the next few months as well. I think I'm most looking forward to school starting back up. We have missed connecting to those counselors and teachers. So honestly, the last thing I'll say is I'm looking forward to at first just to getting back to that sense of normalcy and connection to our referral sources. I worry that we still don't have the connection to the kids that need us right now. So lot coming up.
Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
I know that you've been involved with Safe Place for 20 plus years now. And I'm not saying you're retirement age by any stretch of the imagination. I know you still have a lot to give. How do you want people to see you?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I think someone that was always willing to hopefully lead by example, never to be someone to not jump in with both feet, whether it be working directly with the kids in shelter or in the mentoring program. I've never been someone that has managed well from above. I've always been, I'm a program person at heart, and, you know, the fundraising and the community partnerships, all of that kind of comes with the role of being, I guess, the executive director. But I'm most comfortable on the floor of Shelter House or at Why Now Camp. And, you know, that's how I would like to remember myself. So I guess that's what I'd say for everybody else too, is that at the end of the day, he was just as willing to roll his sleeves up and get working with the kids as anybody.
A few more questions.
Sure.
How do we help you? What can we do? Anyone who's watching this program, I know what I try to do. Want to do more. I want to see if there's a way I can help bring back truancy court, because I love being a truancy court judge. But what can we do as the public to help you in the mission of Safe Place?
So I think there's two very concrete things I can say. Number one, if you're interested in mentoring, getting involved with our mentoring program, where we are in the middle of recruiting for new mentors. If you are interested in other volunteering, either, you know, in the building or with our kids, even in the shelter program, reach out to us online through social media or give us a call, and we'll invite you over for a tour. So I would say come see us on campus as we open back up here, or consider mentoring. And either way, either of those, you can reach out to me directly, and we'll talk about that. I think you know, the needs have been great. I can't say how much the board and you've meant on the board. You know, your colleagues and our board as a whole has been tremendous the last 2-3 years, especially with kind of just keeping things going and helping us navigate this pandemic. So I know I speak on behalf of the board. That's also an opportunity too. If there's folks out there that are interested in board leadership, contact myself, contact Judge Webb, and we'd love to talk with you a little bit more about getting involved on the board.
Final question. What can we as family court judges do to help out?
So, you know, I think what you've done as far as setting an example of getting out into the community is one. I hope that's something that in one way or another, all the judges find a way to do that. I think that's been a tremendous, it makes me think of truancy court and the time you would spend outside of court with our kids in the opportunity program. That's the kind of thing that goes so far, I think, with our families and kids when they see judges in that type of role, in a different role. I think the other, I think good communication is always important. We've had a number of changes. I'm anticipating there's been a number of changes in court personnel just across the community. It may be a lesson for all of us here is that as we all open back up and get back to normalcy, that we may need to reconnect. We may need to remind ourselves of who are our family court judges and who's part of their, you know, honestly, it feels weird to say it, but there's been such a disconnect that I don't want to lose sight of just spending time and reconnecting and getting to know the programs and the services that are out there. So I would say the other way to do that would be to welcome any of our family court judges or district court judges to also come for a tour. We'd love to have you and host you and show you a little bit more about what we're doing.
I'll make that happen. And also, I will say this: I am the chair of the status subcommittee. Schools have been out, so we haven't had much of a status docket. Once we go back, I will be including more people. Safe Place is going to be involved with that, because as these kids come back to school and there are some issues with them, I need to have you guys on board to make sure. So I'll create that connection.
That's great, Judge. I appreciate that. And again, it reflects just who you are and your passion for the community. So I know there'll be a lot of need out there. So welcome to be at the table.
I appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
Matt, I appreciate you being here today. We're about to wrap up.
Yep.
It's a great opportunity to have you come in, because this is a passion of mine. I love seeing kids. I love seeing them do well. And I love having you in this position to be able to help kids, because that's what we need out here.
Well, likewise, Judge. And I'm inspired every day, and particularly of late as we've interacted a lot over the last month or so, and we can't do it without each other. And I appreciate all of your support.
Well, thanks again. Once
Absolutely.
again, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
And once again, thank you for the audience for being here. And as I always like to close out, it's not what I say. It's not a matter of what I think. At the end of the day, it's all a matter of perspective. Thank you very much.